When I first saw him step through our door, boots soaked in rain, voice carved from smoke and silence, I didn't know he'd be the one to undo everything I thought I knew about love, family, and myself. And by the time he walked away, nothing in me felt whole again. I knew it wasn't my dad before the engine even cut off. The sound was wrong, slower, heavier. My father's truck had a sharp rattle in the fan belt. This one groaned low, like it had memories. And the moment I heard the door slam, I knew something was different. I didn't move from the window. I watched through the glass as a tall figure stepped out into the gravel, shoulders square, movements deliberate. My father came around the corner, arms open like he'd just found a piece of himself he'd lost years ago. "Dalton," he said, his voice louder than usual. "You old bastard." Then came laughter, deep, rare, and real. I hadn't heard my dad laugh like that since Mom left. I should have looked away, gone back to pretending I was interested in the book open on my lap. But I didn't. I watched them come inside, shaking off rain like they didn't feel the cold anymore. My father barely noticed me. "Alex, towel. He's staying a few nights." That was all. No introduction, no warning. The man behind him nodded once, then met my eyes like he already knew me. Not in the way adults usually look at kids, scanning quickly for a sign of usefulness. His gaze held, calm and steady, like he was reading something familiar. "Mark," he said, voice low but not unfriendly. "Guess you're the boy who reads but never turns the page." I handed him the towel. "Alex." His fingers brushed mine. Cold from the rain. Rough. But something in the way he held my stare made my pulse go sideways. That night the house shifted. They talked like people who had buried things together. Names I didn't know. Years squeezed into half sentences. War stories that weren't meant to entertain. I sat quiet, listening more to the things they didn't say than the ones they did. Mark didn't speak much unless asked, but when he did, his words were clean, exact. Like every sentence had already been stripped of what wasn't necessary. When he laughed, it was low and short, but the kind of laugh that made the walls feel closer. At one point, he looked over. "Still in school?" "Graduated last month." "What's next?" "No idea," I said, which makes my dad twitch. That got a grin from him. Not a crime to be uncertain. I expected my father to scoff, but he just leaned back with his beer, already drifting towards sleep. 10 minutes later, he was out cold in the recliner. Mark stood, collected the bottles, and nodded toward the kitchen. I followed. He rinsed the glasses. I dried. We didn't speak for a while. "You don't talk much," he said finally. "Neither do you." Fair. We moved at the same rhythm. When we turned at the same time, our shoulders brushed. Neither of us stepped away right away. He smelled like wet pine and metal. It wasn't cologne, just life. When the last dish was done, he nodded toward the porch. "Need air." The rain had stopped. Everything was slick and quiet. We stood out there without speaking. I leaned against the railing. He lit a cigarette. "Thought you quit," I said. "I forget sometimes." A long pause, then he asked, "Your dad treat you all right?" I hesitated. "Depends on the day." He nodded like that made perfect sense. "Men like him," Mark said, "they don't know how to handle silence in their sons. They mistake it for weakness." I looked at him. "You know that from experience?" He didn't answer directly, just exhaled smoke and watched it fade. "I spent a long time mistaking discipline for strength," he said. "Wasn't until later I learned the two don't always match." Another pause. The wind picked up. My arms were cold, but I didn't move. "I don't think he sees me," I said. "Not really." Mark glanced at me. "I think you've gotten used to not being seen." That landed harder than I wanted it to. After a minute, I said, "You're good at reading people." "No, I'm just old enough to recognize the patterns." The air between us thickened, like something unspoken had settled in. "Does he know?" I asked, barely above a whisper. He didn't ask what I meant. "No," he said, "and if he did, I wouldn't be here." I looked out into the dark yard. The wet grass shined under the porch light. "Have you ever—" I stopped. Mark turned his head slowly. "Yeah," he said, "once." I nodded, didn't ask more. Inside, the old clock chimed once. Midnight. "You should sleep," he said. "I'm not tired." He gave me a look. not annoyed, just steady. I'm not going to break, I said. I know. But something in his tone told me I wasn't the one he was worried about. When I finally turned in, I lay awake for a long time, listening to the way the house breathed. The rain had started again, light and slow. I could hear him downstairs walking softly through the dark, not pacing, just present. I didn't know what was happening, not fully, but I knew what I felt wasn't confusion. It was clarity, quiet and terrifying. He was my father's friend, a man built from war and silence. But the way he looked at me wasn't wrong. It wasn't even complicated. It was real, and I wasn't sure how long I could pretend I didn't see it too. By the time I made it downstairs, he was already outside, hammer in one hand, a cigarette burning in the other. The porch railing had needed fixing for months. He didn't ask permission. He just started working. Your dad said someone could break their neck on this, Mark said without looking up. I told him that a year ago. He smirked. Guess it needed to come from someone in uniform. I handed him the box of nails. He nodded his thanks, then crouched, examining the base of the post like it owed him answers. His hands moved with muscle memory. No wasted motion, no hesitation. You ever build anything? He asked. No? You should. You'd like it. It's honest. We worked in silence. I passed tools, held wood steady. He didn't give directions unless he had to. He watched the way I held the hammer, then stopped me gently. Not like that. You're tilting it. Firm wrist. He stepped behind me, hand over mine, guided the movement. His breath was close. My pulse jumped. I tried not to react. Like that? Better, he said quietly. He stepped back a second too late. By noon, we sat on the steps, sweat drying on our arms, mugs of bitter coffee in hand. My father always said building things was a waste unless you owned the land, I said. He was wrong. He usually is. Mark didn't laugh, just stared out toward the tree line. You remind me of someone, he said eventually. Who? He shook his head. Doesn't matter. They didn't stick around. I didn't ask why. The way he said it, it already hurt. Later that afternoon, we repaired the shed behind the house. The roof had collapsed years ago. Mark said it was worth saving. I believed him. We didn't talk much, just worked. At some point, he started calling me kid. The first time I let it go. The second time, I didn't. I'm not a kid. He paused mid-swing, then gave a faint nod. Fair. For the rest of the day, he just said, hey, when he needed me. Something about that small change settled deep. That night, he cooked. Said he owed my dad a meal. I watched from the edge of the kitchen as he moved. Precise, focused, no wasted motion. When he handed me a spoon to taste the sauce, I shook my head. Not hungry. He raised an eyebrow. Didn't ask. I tasted it. It was good. He didn't smile, but something relaxed in his face. After dinner, my dad opened another beer and sank into the recliner. Same spot, same habit. 10 minutes later, he was asleep. Mark collected the bottles and looked at me. Porch? I followed. Outside, the night was thick. The rain had returned, lighter now. The porch light flickered once before steadying. You ever serve? He asked. No. He nodded. Didn't think so. You don't carry that kind of weight. I carry other things. I know. His voice had dropped. Softer now. Something in it made me turn to him. You ever tell him? I asked. About what? I just stared. No, he said. Why not? Because he'd never look at me the same. I nodded slowly. He doesn't look at me the same already. That hit something. He stepped forward, leaned on the railing. You think he knows? No, but he suspects, and suspicion's enough for him to start building walls. Mark's jaw tightened. You deserve better. I don't even know what that means. It means someone who sees you. He looked at me then, not like before, not like a passing glance or polite acknowledgement. It landed. The silence stretched. Then I said it. I don't think anyone's ever looked at me the way you do. His breath caught, and then, softly, that's the problem. The rain tapped louder now, a rhythm like a heartbeat, steady and unignorable. I didn't move closer. Neither did he. We didn't need to. I'm going to bed, he said finally, voice low. You should too. I nodded, But as he turned away, I said his name. He stopped. You don't have to pretend with me. His shoulders tensed. That's exactly why I have to. He didn't look back. Inside, I sat on my bed, hands shaking slightly. Not from fear, from the pressure of holding something too fragile to name. Down the hall, I heard footsteps, then silence. I didn't sleep, and when morning came, the distance between us hadn't shrunk. It had sharpened. He sat at the table, reading the paper like nothing had happened. I poured my coffee and didn't look up, but every time I glanced his way, he was already looking somewhere else. By the third day, we barely spoke. My dad didn't notice. He was too busy lecturing about the weather, lumber prices, or how the neighbor's dog kept digging under the fence. Mark smiled in the right places. I nodded when expected. It was all performance. But underneath, the air felt off. Every small movement, every pause was louder than words. When my dad left for town, the silence returned like a door slamming shut. I went outside and painted the porch rail we'd fixed. It gave me something to focus on, something I could control. He came out an hour later, stood near the steps. You missed a spot, he said. I know. He didn't offer to help, just stayed there watching. At some point, I stopped pretending. What are you waiting for? He didn't answer. I can feel you looking at me. Not everything has to be said. Maybe not, but it's still there. He exhaled, slow and heavy. You don't understand what this is. Then tell me. He stepped closer. I've spent years building a life where this doesn't exist, where I don't exist. I'm not asking you to tear it down. I'm just asking you to stop lying. I'm not lying. Then what do you call it? He looked at me finally and didn't look away. I call it survival. That was the first time I saw fear in him. Not fear of me, but fear of what came after. That night, my dad passed out early. Mark and I sat in the living room. Lights dim, the old fan humming behind us. The TV played something we weren't watching. I said nothing. He said less. Then he turned. Do you think this is a phase? I frowned. You mean for me? He nodded. No. And if you're asking because you hope it is for you, don't. His jaw tightened. You don't know what I've seen. What happens to people like us? You mean people like me? No, he said, voice breaking. People like me, who should have known better, who let it happen anyway. We stared at each other. The room shrank. I'm not a mistake, I said. I know that. Then why do you act like I am? He stood abruptly, pacing once, then stopping near the window. Rain again. It always came back. You're my friend's son, he said. You're half my damn age. I should have stayed in the truck and never walked through that door. But you did. I wish I hadn't. That's not true. He didn't deny it. I stood too. My hands were shaking again. I don't want anything from you, I said. I just want to stop pretending this didn't happen. He turned slowly. What happened? We saw each other. That was it. The sentence hung there, raw and final. He stepped forward, close enough that I could hear his breath change. This doesn't end well. I know. And then for a moment, he let it happen. His hand found my neck, steady, firm, hesitant, not possessive, just there. His forehead touched mine. We didn't move. We didn't speak. The contact was brief, but it shattered something between us. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. He didn't wipe them. I shouldn't have done that. But you did, his voice cracked. You don't know what this means. I do. He stepped away fast, like the air had turned sharp. I need to leave. I nodded. Of course you do. He turned toward the hallway, paused, then looked back. I won't ask you to forget. Good, I said, because I won't. When the door to the guest room closed, it sounded like the end of something, but it wasn't. Not really. That night I lay in bed wide awake, the rain steady again, like it knew, like it remembered everything. The next morning his duffel was packed, boots by the door, keys in hand. He didn't say goodbye. Neither did I. But as he stepped outside, he stopped long enough to look at me one last time. That was the moment. Not a kiss, not a confession, just a look. And everything we weren't allowed to be was in it. After he left, everything got quiet. Not the normal kind of quiet. The house had always been that. This was different. Heavy, careful, like the walls remembered, and the floor knew not to creak too loudly. My father didn't ask where Mark went, just said something about him having places to be, then opened a beer and watched a game he didn't care about. I stayed out on the porch for hours, not looking down the road, just listening to nothing. When night came, it didn't feel like it ended anything. It just made the silence louder. I stopped sleeping, at least not in the way that felt real. I'd close my eyes, drift, then jolt awake thinking I'd heard his truck. But it never came back. Weeks passed. My father went back to routines, fixing what didn't need fixing, drinking what didn't need finishing. One night he sat across from me at dinner and said, "You were quiet when he was here, quieter than usual." I shrugged. Didn't have much to say. He nodded like that made sense, like we weren't both pretending not to know the truth. "Mark's a good man," he added. "Seen a lot." "Yeah," I said. "I could tell." We didn't talk about him again. Not once. By fall, I packed a bag and left. It wasn't dramatic. No speech. Just told my dad I found a place in the city, closer to work. He nodded once, then helped me load the car. "Stay in touch," he said. "I will." He didn't hug me. I didn't expect him to. The apartment was small, quiet, and nothing like home. That made it easier. I worked mornings at the bookstore. Evenings I walked without a destination. Sometimes I stopped near the train station just to watch people leave. That made sense to me. Leaving. One day a plain envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address, no stamp. Inside was a single postcard. Photo of a pine road stretching toward nothing. On the back, "Hope you're doing well. Still fixing things wherever I go." That was it. No name. None needed. I stared at the handwriting so long the edges curled in my fingers. Then I slipped it into a book by my bed and didn't touch it again. Time passed, but it didn't smooth everything. It just gave things room to settle. I didn't date anyone. I didn't explain why. I didn't feel like I owed anyone that. Some nights, I'd think about the way he said my name. Soft. Waited. Like he wasn't sure if it was a question or a warning. Some memories don't fade. They get sharper. One winter morning, my father called. "Roof's leaking," he said. "Think I'll get to it in spring." I offered to come visit. "Not expecting you to fix it," he said. "I know." I went anyway. The house looked the same. Paint still peeling. Tools where he always left them. But he moved slower now. Thinner in the face. More space in his voice. We didn't talk about Mark. But after dinner I stepped outside just to breathe. The porch railing was still solid. Pale blue paint holding strong. I ran my hand across it without thinking. That's when I heard it. The sound of a truck slowing near the gate. Not his. Then, yes, the sound. That low, uneven rumble. The one I hadn't heard in months but would know in any season. The truck didn't pull in. It stopped near the edge of the road. The door opened. A figure stepped out, bent down near the post. Flowers. Simple ones. Left gently at the base of the gate. Then he turned to go. "Mark." I didn't mean to say it out loud. He froze. He looked up, just enough light from the porch to catch his face. He stepped closer, but didn't climb the stairs. Just stood there a few feet away. "I wasn't sure you'd be here," he said. "I wasn't sure you'd come back." He looked down, then back at me. "Didn't plan to. Just passing through." "The flowers?" I asked. "For your dad." I nodded. "He never stopped respecting you." He didn't speak right away. Then, he was a hard man to know, but he knew loyalty when he saw it. We stood in silence, the kind that meant more than any sentence. "You look well," he said. "So do you." He smiled faintly. "Older, maybe. Still you." That paused him. "I thought about writing more," he said. "Didn't think I should. I kept the one you sent." His jaw tightened. "I hoped you would." The air between us held everything we didn't say. No apologies, no promises, just the shared fact that something once happened and mattered. "Take care of yourself, Alex," he said finally. "You too." He touched the brim of his cap like he had that first day, then turned back toward the truck. I didn't stop him, but I didn't look away either. After Mark left that night, I stayed outside. The porch light flickered, then went steady again. I stood there long after the truck turned into shadow, long after the dust settled, not hoping he'd come back, not needing him to, just letting things be still for once. Inside, Dad was asleep in his chair, the same one he always used, his chest rising and falling. One arm dropped low, remote on the floor. I watched him a moment, then turned off the TV and pulled a blanket over his legs. He didn't stir. In the morning, I made coffee before he got up. The air was cold enough to bite, but the sun made it through the window, golden and quiet. He came in, still half asleep. "You been out there all night?" "Some of it." He nodded like that meant something. Maybe it did. We sat without talking. He finally said, "I saw the truck. Didn't want to interrupt." "You wouldn't have." He hesitated. "He doing all right?" "Yeah." "Good." Another pause. "You?" I met his eyes. "Getting there." That was all we said about it. That weekend, I fixed the roof with him. Not because he asked, just because I knew how. We worked without music, without chatter. Passed each other tools, climbed the ladder in turns. At one point, he looked at the sky and said, "Storm's not far." He didn't mean the weather. I just said, "We'll be ready." He smiled barely, but it was real. That night I left again, back to the city. He didn't walk me out, just said, "See you next time," like it was already promised. In the apartment, life waited. I went back to work. The books didn't change, but something in me did. I started talking more. Not about him, just in general. I let people get closer, not too close, but enough. One day at the station, I watched a man hug another goodbye. No drama, no tears. Just hands clutched tight and a forehead resting against another. I didn't cry watching them, but I remembered. Weeks later, I took the postcard out again, not to reread it, just to hold it. Then I put it in a drawer and didn't take it out again. One evening, I found myself writing. Not a letter. Not really. Just a few lines on the back of a grocery receipt. "You didn't break me, and I didn't break either. We bent, that's all. I didn't send it. Didn't even know where I would. But I folded it and kept it in my wallet. Some things aren't for anyone else. Some things are just for you to know." Months passed. Then one morning I got a call. Not from Mark, from his sister. She'd gotten my number through someone in town. Said she hoped it wasn't crossing a line. Then added, "He talks about you sometimes, when he thinks no one's listening." I didn't ask what he said. Didn't want to break that privacy. She just said, "He's in Tennessee now, building things. Real quiet life. He's all right." "I'm glad." Before she hung up, she said one more thing. "He keeps the postcard you sent, the one with the mountains." I smiled. "I never sent him one." She paused, then, "Well, he's got one. Says it reminds him of something he didn't ruin." That stuck. Not because it was poetic, because it was honest. People talk about closure like it's a door you lock, a thing you do once and then you're free. But real closure? It's making peace with the fact that some things don't finish neatly, some people don't stay, some love doesn't vanish, but it doesn't need to grow either. It can just exist as something that mattered and doesn't have to anymore. Now, years later, when I go home for holidays, Dad's slower. He doesn't drink much. We sit on the porch sometimes, both of us looking at the railing. He knows I fixed it. I know he let it stay. One day he said, "Funny thing about broken wood, it's strongest where you patch it." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Somewhere out there, Mark's probably still fixing fences, still moving, still carrying whatever we didn't say. And me? I don't wait anymore. But I do remember, and that's enough.